Morning, everybody. Got a little bit late, actually. So, welcome to the committee. Welcome to the Police and Crime Panel. Note the fact that we are being recorded and streamed live. A couple of housekeeping matters. If you wish to speak during the meeting, just catch my eye or wave or something. An invitation, what do you want? So we'll vote on the precept, not by a show of hands as normal. It's electronic, and Ross will no doubt show you what to do if you want to, or not if you want to, when we vote. You want to do that now, Ross?
Thank you, Chair. Fairly simple. I think members who were here for the pre-meet have managed to have a little look at the units. Each of you have a unit in front of you, the ones that you usually speak into. Above the mute and speak button, there's 5 buttons. In the middle, there is yes for in favour, abstain, and no for against. Those will flash when the vote is active. The vote will be active for 40 seconds, during which time you can change your vote should you wish. But at 40 seconds, that will be it, and the vote will appear on the screen. I think it's that simple, Chair.
It's simple to you. Has everybody got that? Yep. No. Okay, good. Okay, we'll use that sort of thing when we go to put the vote. And can I move on to item 1 on the agenda? So it's apologies. And Ross, got any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Hopwood, Councillor Mrs Pengelly, Councillor Salmon is substituting, Councillor Penberthy, Councillor Riley is substituting, and Councillor Biederman.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just give Councillor Chopak's apologies. He's away on holiday at the moment.
Right. Okay, it's another one. Okay. So we have...
Chair, Councillor Wright is also running late.
Right. So she'll be here shortly, I imagine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we are quorate. Moving on then to item 2, which is minutes of the... Oh, no, I won't go do that, will I? Well, I'd just like to welcome the Chief Constable. Thank you very much for attending. Members, Chief is not obliged to turn up, but he's got an open invitation, and I'm very pleased to see him here today. And welcome to the Commissioner and Chief Executive. And I won't go through all you, but you're very welcome. Thanks very much for turning up today. So moving to item 2, so the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of November. I'm going to propose eventually that there's an accurate record, but I will go through the minutes page by page. Page 1, anybody got any problems with it? Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6.
Through you, Chair, that we've been made aware of some changes to the minutes that are required. Minutes from previous meetings, so there's a couple of inaccuracies in there that we'd like to report to the committee, and we'll make sure are captured for the record. There's reference to minute 106F, where the Commissioner requested a reduction to 10 seconds rather than a 10-second reduction. And it should read P1 rather than P2. There's also a misspelt name, which we'll address. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, that. I'm going to propose the, apart from those minor amendments, that the minutes are a true and accurate record. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second. Oh.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the panel, are you all in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Were there any against? No? No abstentions? Thanks very much. So I'm going to sign them. You want to look after those? Thanks. So declaration of interest, any declaration of interest in respect of the items on the agenda today? None, thank you. Public questions, there are no public questions. So moving on to item 5, the Commissioner's precept proposal. The Commissioner will present this together with Nikki Allen, no doubt. I would like to ask members to just hold their questions to the end of the presentation. So, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, panel, and I suppose I should say Happy New Year to you, as I don't think we've met or seen each other since we've started this year, so pleased to be here to present the proposals for the council tax precept. And I suppose there's a few things of how we normally run this for those who are new or substitutes today. I will do an opening context for the budget. The Treasurer, Nikki Allen, will give you the overview of the strategic elements in relation to it and about the sustainability of the budget going forward. And the Chief Constable will be able to help and support with any operational questions you may have, which may come out of some of the discussion and the debate about the precept. I suppose the first thing that I should start with is it's quite significant today that we have the live link to the coroner's inquest in relation to the deaths of 5 people who lost their lives. It's absolutely unbelievable how, the families that will still be suffering from the loss of their loved ones, and some may be utilising this building today or over the coming weeks to see or listen into that inquest. And I'm sure the panel will be with me in saying that our thoughts are with those families as we move forward. Among many of the areas I'll be covering today, I will touch on firearms licensing and talk about some of the investments in that area as well. And I'll highlight the key parts of the investment in the budget and just give you a flavour of where I expect us to be able to deliver with this money for the future for our community. I suppose the first thing to say that might be helpful is that I come before you with a proposal that is below inflation tax rise. We're all going to be struggling with this situation this year in particular. So I suppose you realise that there is still work to be done regardless of the proposal that's before you today in ensuring that we have a sustainable budget going forward. But not only that, we have to make what we've all got work better and smarter, and that's a promise that I give to you as well, and I know that you'll be doing that too within your local authorities. But before again I start into the detail of the budget, I must actually address the national shocking news that you will have seen around the police officers and the awful crimes that have been happening by police officers throughout this country. And it's not just the Met, it is in other forces throughout this country, including our own. And there's no place in the force for people like this, and there's no place in society for it. But we really do need to remember that the majority of police officers and staff working for us are decent, have high integrity and hard-working on our behalf. And we need their help to help root out these people that are in the organisation that should not be there. We can talk about the quality of vetting, we can talk about how these people get into the organisation, but it doesn't stop them starting when they're already here. I think it's reassuring to know, and I just thought I'd let panel be aware, that the majority of intelligence about police officers and staff comes from their colleagues. So I think that's a bit reassuring, and there's nothing that I have seen more than police officers absolutely loathe bad cops. more than we do, because it brings down the reputation of everything they stand for. So I believe there's a brighter future going forward, but I have felt the need to address that, and the need for building trust is absolutely part of this budget today. As you know, I do an annual budget survey every year, and this year is no different, and it gets to understand what our constituents' attitudes are of policing. Interesting to note that there's an increase in confidence in policing in the budget survey, both generally in policing and in Devon and Cornwall Police. Now, this survey was conducted before the latest revelations that have happened, and I think I cannot guarantee you that they would say the same thing today if asked. So we just must bear that in mind when we're considering people's views. However, I do know that in the face of such events, that we must work even harder to retain and build that trust, which underpins everything we do in our communities and is at the absolute core of consent for policing. So today, our plan is about building trust and resilience to keep this region safer. That our foundation of creating a force where all our people are motivated and better connected to our constituents. Experience has taught us that in an economic hardship time in our society, there is a corresponding increase in crime. And today, I'm making the case for what I believe is needed to ensure our communities can be and feel safer today, tomorrow, and beyond. While we're looking forwards, we are actually at a threshold and have the opportunity to build on the best of what we have with our newly appointed Chief Constable, Mr. Kerr. You've had a chance to meet him before, you've confirmed his appointment, and hear his views on what policing should be going forward. I believe it was music to all our ears, what we heard. Now, Chief Constable Kerr has a wealth of experience and knowledge from not only around the UK, but also globally, of what good policing looks like. It's visible to our communities with motivated officers, staff and volunteers, connecting with constituents in ways that they want to be connected. Good policing also means building on good systems and infrastructure that are meaningful and will last, from whether that's reopening a police station front desk to a really good crime recording system that achieves justice for victims. And the organisation is just going through the pain of introducing a new one right now that will create a little bit of a shadow for a few more months, but it will be a huge benefit to our communities. Let alone our innovative counsellor advocate scheme, by the way, that goes from strength to strength to connect with policing. So you will now hear that both Chief Constable Kerr and I understand what our constituents' needs are, and today is about what policing needs to deliver that. You'll know that the survey that I ran lasted for a month. It was online, or people could ring my office and we could do it for them. 7,318 people shared their views with me. 2,617 people responded just to the budget survey, but 4,701 responded to the police station front desks survey. So issue-based, as the chairman has always said to me, is the thing that gets people out. It always reminds me of his library consultation, which 100,000 people responded to, and I've never yet managed to get into that realm. But these people have particularly influenced my views today about the budget and how we're going to work going forward. The budget survey really showed that more people believe that the council tax precept is value for money, which was heartening and reassuring to me, as our constituents are starting to feel more connected and much more aware of our efforts. Really high levels of awareness of Operation Scorpion came through in that survey. But what rings out loud and clear is how important police stations are to community cohesion, providing places of safety and where people can engage with neighbourhood teams via email, web chat, as well as providing a friendly face. And to give you an idea of what constituents want to see, 70% of people agree that investments should be made to open more police stations to the public. 86% of respondents said they would like to use police stations as locations to report crime, and 65% said they would like to share information with the police about what's going on in their communities. So in response to that, I will be opening 6 more police station front desks this year. As you know, literally the end of this month, we now have all of the other 6 that I agreed last year. So we've got Tiverton, Bude, Newton Abbot, Falmouth, Penzance and Newquay so far, and I will shortly announce what those 6 new ones will be this year. And I will have to say a huge thank you to Alison Stone, who has been the person to get Tiverton Police Station the first to reopen and has been doing a grand job there in connecting with our community and my office to let us know how things are going. So a shout out to Alison Stone, member of police staff. Last year I promised you that you would see the largest recruitment drive in years, creating that new pipeline for the front line, and I'm happy to say that we have honoured that pledge. By the end of next month, we will have the highest record number of police officers recruited into this force of 3,610. And it's been a real effort for the force to be able to do that. They've never recruited so many, and so many actually in the last 6 months, more than any other time. But the force must get smarter in the deployment of these officers so that they can continue to deliver value for money in the way we tackle crime and secure greater public confidence. Since being elected your Police and Crime Commissioner, I have pledged to strengthen, stabilise and sustain the force from our 2016 level of 1.8 officers per 1,000 population to now 2.02 officers per 1,000 population, and that is even with the recently published population increases. If the new ONS figures the census figures weren't published, we would be 2.2, but we recognise we've got to keep pace with our growing size of our community. As you know, policing is not just about solving crimes, although absolutely vital, and there's some particular crime types they need to get better at, but it's also about creating communities that feel safe too. Using this budget means being strategic about making the force fit for the future. So the investment I'm asking our communities to make is for a dedicated team exploiting our technology to deploy our enhanced officers more effectively. It's vital that the right number of the most appropriately trained officers in the areas where they are needed are able to be easily deployed. And this equates to £200,000 in the budget. As I mentioned earlier, we're also going to be investing in firearms licensing, particularly as we have the highest number of legally held firearms in Great Britain. With no local powers, by the way, to set the fee for this service, it's nationally set by the government. Did you know it only costs £79.50 for a shotgun certificate that lasts for 5 years? This equates to £15.90 for each year that you might hold that certificate. I believe this is a real opportunity for reform, but it's just not one we will talk about today. So with the Keyham inquest taking place online, right here in this building as we sit, it's timely that the second investment ask is being discussed today as well. And I'm seeking to lock in the temporary investment that we've already put into firearms licensing to make it permanent. And that investment was created because it was on the back of the Keyham tragedy, but also the new government guidance that then came out in October. So we're having to do more checks and an improved process. And I'm seeking to make this investment permanent to the amount of £600,000. The third area of investment to work smarter in, and we need to invest, is digital forensics. There's been significant growth in much of our lives being conducted online, and the threats and risks that accompany this lifestyle have shifted, as over 90% of all crime now has a digital footprint. The pressure on digital forensics is seeing growth in the past 2 years. This issue goes to the heart of public confidence and victim satisfaction with the ability for the police to investigate crime effectively and quickly. This will minimise the length of time victims, suspects and families are awaiting justice, and it will cost us £262,000 a year, with it actually growing in the medium term. Now, as you all know, collaboration is our greatest asset in Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and it continues to work together with all partners on the 4 key priorities for the force: antisocial behaviour, drug dealing, violence and road safety. But the most pertinent to mention is the work on drugs with Operation Scorpion, which I highlighted had begun last year. The success of this cross-border working with the 4 other forces in the South West region and police and crime commissioners is to tackle the persistent drug dealers that we have in our communities. And we could probably all name the streets in our areas that we represent, or towns, or even villages. It's not just in the cities. And the success of it has been so much so that these are the results from the first 3 phases. So we've done 3 Op Scorpion phases last year. We've seized suspected drugs worth an estimated £797,000, £363,000 of cash seized, 391 arrests, weapons including knives, tasers and machetes seized and destroyed. These results speak directly to what the people need in our community and they want. Our budget survey showed that 85% of people are supportive of further investment in those joint operations between the South West forces to tackle drug dealing in our region. I've been particularly impressed with Operation Medusa, which is led by Merseyside Police, and I'm keen to invest to secure a closer working relationship with both their Police and Crime Commissioner and police force to better tackle county lines coming from Liverpool and the surrounding area. My commissioning intentions plan has a clear focus on these priorities, the 4 that I always mention, and the budget for this area is increasing to just over £9 million. This is due mainly to increases in grants from the government for victims and violence, which is very much welcomed. And one area to just assure members that's in the plan is our youth outreach service. Some of you may have had some direct experience with it, but I believe it needs greater promotion with members. But this is where we help establish ringleaders in communities, and we particularly put in appropriate interventions to distract those young people from boredom and crime. And I believe it really does need more prominence, because we've got to solve these issues that are driven by and affecting young people, let alone the wider impact on the community of antisocial behaviour. I'm proud of our achievements so far and committed as always to making the things happen that I actually say. However, with societal challenges and the cost of living crisis and the erosion of public trust in policing, it's never been more vital to ensure our communities feel safe. I understand that my precept request is in the context of unprecedented pressure for each of your constituents and your local authorities that you represent here. Your limited resources, in particular, we've really got to work together to make sure we are focused on keeping constituents safe through all of this. And I wish there was an alternative way that I could present to you today, but there isn't one at this time. My office has worked hard to try and achieve efficiencies to help with this issue, making cost savings of £8.6 million, as outlined in the Chief Constable's letter. But with inflation levels running above 10% and the rising costs of energy, the police will not be able to maintain services at the current level without the use of £3 million of reserves, as well as the increase in council tax. The alternative is a dramatic cut to police officers and staff, precisely not what our constituents tell us that they want. We have a track record, though, of being at our best for our communities when we work together, and you've graciously supported, some more positively than others, my previous proposals before you. And I don't take that support for granted at all, and I know that you will be expecting tangible results. So my ask is that you support me to utilise the full precept today of 6.8%, which is £15 for a Band D property, or the equivalent of £1.50 a month if you pay over the 10 months by direct debit. My commitment to you is that I will continue to work tirelessly for policing in this region, working with our new Chief Constable, with his dedicated officers and teams, and most importantly with you and our constituents. We will work smarter, harder to deliver safe, resilient and connected communities. Now, the Treasurer of my office, Nikki Allen, is, as you will know, the 151 officer for my office. She's going to present to you the totality of funding to policing and how this is sustainable over the medium term. Nikki.
Thank you very much. I believe Jake's going to control my slides for me this morning, so thank you. All the slides will be made available to you, so they'll all be sent out to you. So can I have the next slide, please, Jake? Thank you. So just to start with, I thought we would go back and just have a look at what we assumed this time last year. Quite a lot's happened in the last 12 months with our economy, so I just wanted to take a slight look back. So last year we assumed that we would have the grant levels as announced as part of the CSR and £10 council tax flexibilities for each year. The grant levels have remained the same and have been committed to those levels, but a £15 council tax flexibility has been given for this year. Does not mean it will carry on into 24-25, but for this year. Last year, for 22-23, we assumed a 2.5% pay award, and that's actually come in as an average of 5% across both police officers and police staff. Quite a significant increase there. A 5% increase meant that it cost Devon and Cornwall an additional 7.8 million. We were given additional funds by the Home Office, but it was only partial funding, which covered about half of that, so we were still looking at a shortfall. Inflation is obviously the big issue. We assumed 5% last year for inflation, and I think at that point it wasn't fully understood the energy crisis that we were going to be coming into, because remember, we were talking about this January last year. So what we're looking at now is an inflation that's peaked at 11.1% and has slightly come back down to 10.5%, but still looking at significant increases. Next slide, please. So when we look at the provisional settlement for 23-24, the overall additional funding, what we're looking at there is the consultation is provisional. I just want to mention it is still provisional. We've not had the final settlement. We're hoping to get that next week, and there's no changes expected from the figures that I'm presenting today. As part of the consultation, the responses were due in on the 13th of January, and this year, all PCCs were expected to provide details on efficiencies and productivity included in their budgets to demonstrate that we weren't just looking for council tax increases as the first point of call. Within the response that our Commissioner made, we also highlighted opportunities for the government to look at what national barriers they could help us with and support us to actually get over those barriers. So overall, we're looking at additional funding of £523 million, and that's what's come through to policing. Underneath that, there's £174 million that's been announced as an increase to grant. The CSR in 21 announced £100 million, so £74 million additional to what we were expecting. However, that's twofold. We were given £140 million to support the pay award for 22-23, and we were deducted £70 million because of the reversal on the national insurance that was done in the autumn last year. So we were totally expecting that, and so that hasn't caused us any crisis because we've taken away the expenditure and the income. So that you can see that the amount that we were expecting as part of the spending review last year has remained constant. All of this is dependent on the maintenance of the national uplift in police officers, which leads me directly to the next one, £275 million of specific grant. This is increased by £140 million, which means that this is at risk, part of this is at risk, £6.5 million, if we don't maintain those level of police officers. And as part of the provisional settlement, those numbers of what we have to maintain are published, and the provisional settlement is open to the public. £349 million is assumed as the council tax flexibility. Now that figure assumes that all commissioners will take the £15 flexibility available to them. Overall, the increase as published as part of the settlement for Devon and Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly is 4%. However, the national average is 3.6%. Now, what they do in the provisional settlement is they take the Office of the Budget Responsibility ONS data on council tax base increases. So actually for Devon and Cornwall, we're slightly ahead of what they're predicting. So for us, it's actually an increase of 4.3%. So it's why you will see a difference between what's published nationally and what we publish locally. Next slide, please. So when we look at this for Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, we're looking at, included in our figures, we're looking at a 2% pay award. This is in line with other forces and commissioners. Just to give you a flavour, 1% additionality on the pay award is £3.3 million per annum. And we look at the pay awards across police officers and police staff remaining constant between the two. As I said earlier, the maintenance of the national uplifting officers has to be maintained to at least 2024. We don't know for 24-25 yet, and if we don't maintain that, there's £6.5 million at risk. We don't have the exact figures on how that clawback will work, but last year they did it on thresholds. So if you didn't meet by a certain percentage, you had some of your grant deducted. We've had confirmation that the continuation of the pension fund has been agreed. That was 153 million. For us, that's 3.3 million. Now, that was agreed the last time the police officers had a revaluation of their pension scheme, and that's been a specific grant ever since. We're now coming into 24-25, having the next revaluation, and it still hasn't been built into the base. It has been part of our response to the consultation. Capital grant, there are no capital grant allocations from the Home Office. This stopped for 22-23 and has not been reinstated for 23-24, so we don't get any capital grant. Next slide, please. When looking at all of the specific issues that we look at, if we take everything in round that's been proposed to you today, the budget requirement will go up to 384.4 million. That's an increase of 12.8 million on last year. We have a capital programme before you over 4 years worth 71 million. This covers vehicles, estates, ICT and equipment. We have an overall increase of funding of 6.1 million. That's the 4.3. And the reason that's slightly different to the increase in the budget requirement is because specific grants are dealt with slightly separately. But overall, it's an increase of 16.1 million in funding. We've got the funding, as I've said before, is reliant on the maintenance of the national officer uplift. Staffing equates to 85% of the overall budget. So you can see that that's a very big risk factor within our budget. Of our whole budget, 58% of that is for police officers, 27% of that for police staff. So if we have to maintain the police officer numbers, effectively, we're looking for the majority of our savings on 42% of our budget, because obviously we will put that specific grant at risk. Pay and inflation, we have pressures of 23.9 million. And when you look at that against the level of increased funding, you can see that there's quite a significant gap there. Within that, we have 4.6 million of inflation. And what we're looking at for gas and electricity are increases above 100% on what we paid for in 22-23. Much of the reason of this is because we've had fixed figures for 22-23. We come off of that on the 31st of March. So we're looking at significant increases. For pay, we're looking at increases of £19 million. And that part of that is because we had an increase above the base last year, which we have to catch up on for 22-23, and then what we're providing for 23-24. We've also included in that for pay and inflation, we've had a pension revaluation for the local government pension scheme, which sees our fees going up by £1.8 million for next year. We've got included within this the £15 proposed council tax increase of the 6.08%. Within that, all in the round, we've also got £8.6 million that we're looking for savings and efficiencies. Excuse me. Within that, within that, we've got £3.9 million worth of efficiency savings. We've got some planned reductions, which we knew were coming out for temporary teams, and other mitigations, things like cost reductions, holding police staff vacancies, and workforce flexibility. What we do need to remember, though, with these savings, there are always blunt tools that we can use, but we don't particularly want to use those. So those will be our plan B, and we want to give the Chief Constable time to be able to come up with his action plan for how he wants to move forward. He hasn't been with us for a month yet, so I think it was a bit of a tall order to expect an action plan within a few weeks of starting. So when we look at the financial risks, I think financial resilience is extremely important in times of economic volatility. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a number of public sector organisations struggle, and some even having to have Section 114 notices declared. The building blocks of financial resilience are fairly simple. Make sure you can afford what you buy. Always look at what the ongoing liability from those decisions are. Don't use reserves for recurring expenditure, and always consider risk and ensure your assumptions are realistic. So you can see they're fairly simplistic. There are many other blocks which we use for financial resilience, but those are probably the key ones. There's lots of mitigations we can do on the risk, a balanced medium-term financial position, which is what we're here to discuss today, assurances of no cliff edges, realistic assumptions, general reserves to weather our unexpected storms, and good, transparent decision-making. Most of this you will find in some of the reports that have been made following public sector organisations issuing Section 114 notices. It would also appear that inflation has peaked and is now slowly coming down, still remains high at 10.5. I think next year for 23-24, the government predictions are for 7.6%. The bank rate is at 3.5%. We're looking at the anticipated further increases on that before coming down in future years. That is particularly relevant if you've got a degree of borrowing within your proposals. We're not forecasting the need to do any external borrowing in 23-24, but we probably will have to do some in 24-25 towards the middle end of that particular year. As you will be aware, that our budget is particularly sensitive to pay award assumptions, as we've said before, with 85% being for pay. The review of the funding formula continues to go on. We're looking that we're potentially going to go to the first round of consultation fairly soon. We are fully engaged with the national work. Our commissioner sits on the national steering group, and I sit on the technical reference group nationally. So we're fully engaged in that work. And I think I commented at the last meeting that we have put in a full submission on sparsity and seasonality, which has been commended by the Home Office. We have a police officer pension revaluation coming next year for 24-25, so that is something that we will need to consider. And it's the first revaluation occurred since the McLeod judgment of a few years ago. And I think I've commented on the increased levels of specific grant before, so I won't go over those again. So, next slide, please. So for inflation, CPI in November was 10.7. In November 2021, it was 5.1%. And in November 2020, 0.3%. So it's significantly increased over the last few years. Nothing that you're not already aware of. And as I've said, it's dropped very slightly in January to 10.5. I commented on the electricity and the gas over 100%. So electricity, 103%. That's going to cost us nearly £2 million next year. And for gas, 129%, 800,000. We've already started to take steps to start to bring down our usage, And in fact, this winter, we've reduced all our temperatures by 1 degree. It's had mixed responses, I would suggest, but we've kept it at the 1 degree. Fuel, as we know, this has remained fairly static for us, but I thought I would still put it up here. We've all seen that the price at the pumps has slightly come down. The fuel estimates that we have are based on us having to do 15 million miles a year, and it is not a service that we can significantly reduce those number of miles. For construction, what we're looking at, intelligence is showing us that in the southwest, people are becoming more selective about the tenders that they want to bid for. Many are only interested on negotiated tenders rather than fixed tenders, and who can blame them really with inflation as it is at the moment. The building cost information for the tender price inflation is looking at 7.4% for 2023. However, for the southwest, we're being told that ours could be up to 50% higher than that, purely because of what's happening in the southwest. Being in a peninsula, it makes us not quite as attractive as many others in the country. So we could be looking at 11.1% for construction, let alone the delays that we have in supplies, etc., coming in. And the pay award, I think I've talked about that quite a bit already, so I'll move on to the next slide. So when looking at our council tax base increase has gone up by 1.36%. We were estimating about 1.5, so not significantly down, but it is down slightly. Part of that is because for this year, we've had consultation coming in from the collecting authorities, consulting us on increasing the support for working families, where the cap will be raised from 80% to 100% support. And the Commissioner has been happy to support those. And it does affect our council tax base directly, but obviously these are difficult times for many of our communities. When we look at the surplus, we are looking at an additional £1.6 million for us. We have got the final year of the deficit that we spread over 3 years at the start of the pandemic. So this is the last year that we will be paying £863,000 back on our deficit. Sorry, I nearly bankrupted us in one sentence. So that's the final year. That 1.6 is net of that. So you can see that we've got quite a significant surplus for this year, and they have remained quite high even through the difficult times of the pandemic. The additional support that I've indicated here is that all collecting authorities were provided, allocations were announced on the 23rd of December for additional tax support fund. For Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, this means that an additional 3.3 million will come in to this area, and that is being given to the collecting authorities to allocate out to those people that are vulnerable and need additional support. Next slide, please. So on this particular slide, the top of it is quite narrow, so apologies that you might not be able to read that quite so well. But this is about the chargeable dwellings, and I've pulled this from all of the council tax base returns that all the collecting authorities made in September. So it's a point in time. But you can see that cumulatively, anything A to D, we're looking at 83 to 84%, depending on roundings, and A to C, 68%, with B being our biggest band. So you can see that we are significantly D and below for all of our chargeable dwellings. Next slide, please. This is based on the council tax levels for next year, and what I've assumed, because I think we're probably one of the first PCCs to go to panel. So I haven't been able to have a look at what everybody else is doing. This is based on if everybody takes the £15. You can see that we're slightly just below the mid, but we're about mid-average for a Band D equivalent. The highest is North Wales at £331.80, but what we do have to remember there is that in Wales they don't have the same rules around council tax caps for referendums. There are, in the top 5, there's only one English Commissioner, and that's Surrey at £310.57. The lowest being Northumbria, £168.84. So the spread between the lowest and the highest is £162.96. So virtually double, really, between the lowest and the highest. So next slide, please. This slide shows you the levels of funding and the gearing that we have. So what we've got here is that the orange is the level of precept, that is the totality of an individual area's funding, and the blue is the level of grant. And you can see, as I talked to you about Surrey and Northumbria, they're at the ends of the scale on this one. So what that means is that depending on your level of income, your gearing will be around your funding. And for Devon and Cornwall, again, we're virtually slap bang in the middle of those particular gearings. We are 43.2% for precept and 56.8% for grant funding. So, next slide, please. One of the main areas for financial resilience, and one of the areas that can provide that assurance, is around reserves. So for the reserves strategy, it sets a framework out for how we deal with our risks. This is reviewed by the Independent Audit Committee, and that's already happened, and they've not brought forward any issues with regard to our reserve strategy. This has been put onto our website. It is published. It's published alongside the capital strategy and the treasury management strategy. So a good read for all, I think, on our website at the moment. So, but they are published annually and agreed annually. The general balances level is set at between 3 and 5%. We're currently, at the end of 22-23, predicting that to be 4.06%. So right in the middle, giving us a little bit of a buffer for any storms, unexpected storms forward. Those general balances are on a risk-based approach. So we do look at all of the risks that we have around inflation, around contingencies, and around any other uninsured liabilities that we might have. Other types of mitigations that you can look at, we've got special grants, other forms of capital financing. Assumptions has come in there again, and we have got a strategy to slightly increase our general balances going forward. Next slide, please. This one looks at our reserve trend over the last few years. This is based on actual, so you've only got it up to 21-22 because obviously 31st of March 22 is the most accurate we can show you. And you will see that the general balances, which is the orange, has gone up slightly. And this is to reflect the size of the organisation. So the size of the organisation has grown predominantly due to our increase in staff, police officer numbers, and for these particular years from 3,220 to 3,422, and as we know, it's growing further. Our net revenue budget has increased from 288 million to 350 million in this timescale. So a larger organisation needs greater resilience, so therefore our balances are reflecting that one. There's a very slight increase in our earmarked reserves. At the end of 21-22, we were given some grant unexpectedly at the end of the year, and also we had some slippage in the capital programme, which was not expected, mainly due to some of the construction delays that I've talked about earlier. Next slide, please. So this one, is in your report, so you've already got it, and this outlines what this means for our council tax B equivalent. So it would take us up to £261.56 per annum. I don't need to reflect those. So basically, this is what our council tax would look like if all the proposals are accepted today. So next slide, please. This is the final slide, and this is a duplicate of slide 5, but with one additional box, which is probably the most important box as a Section 151 officer that I want to highlight to you. And that is based on the proposals that we've got in our budget. This budget, in my opinion, as a Section 151 officer, is robust and sustainable over the medium-term financial strategy. So I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikki. I hope that gives you a flavour of Devon and Cornwall in the context nationally, and some of the local challenges that we've got in terms of the budget. I have to say, as someone who got an A at GCSE Maths, no one is more articulate in talking in plain English way about a budget than Nikki Allen. And so I hope that you found that very useful and helpful, and that's us finished for you, Chairman.
Right, thank you, Commissioner, and give your voice a rest, Nikki. I think, thanks for that. So I'd just like to open this up now for members for questioning. Kevin, yeah.
Thank you. Question for Nikki. We're sort of looking at just over 6% increase, which effectively is a real terms cut when you take into account the level of inflation at the moment. Now, I understand inflation isn't level throughout all the sectors. You know, you mentioned energy and construction is slightly higher and then be slightly lower in other areas. You said 85% was staffing. So obviously, you know, that takes considerable restraint with that sector at the moment going forward. It sounds like you're anticipating inflation to come down quite substantially next year. Given that you are proposing a real terms cut, how much flexibility is there built in just in case inflation doesn't fall as much as you're anticipating? After all, you mentioned yourself that, you know, 12, and we weren't expecting inflation to be anything like it is at the moment. So what are the sort of contingency plans built in?
Thank you. Well, we've got a number of contingencies. We have built in a contingency budget within the net revenue budget to look at inflation and contract awards in general. And I think off the top of my head, it's about £3.5 million. So we have got a contingency in there. What we've also got is we do every single contract that comes forward, we review, we look at. We don't necessarily put inflation on there if we don't have to. So there's a lot of things that we're having to look at. One of the key things is we have to cut our cloth accordingly. So there are things that we've been through. We've reviewed the capital programme. We've reviewed lots of work that we're doing. And in some cases, we just had to say that's going to have to wait, or we're not going to be able to do it to the extent that we wanted to be able to do it. But coming on to the main bit, which was the pay award, we've put in a 2% pay award, which is what we've talked to other commissioners around this. We've talked to other PCCs across England and Wales, and it is in line with what is expecting. We've also talked to the Home Office, because when the spending review was put into place last year, the allowance within that was for a 2% pay award this year. So we feel like we are in line with what is expected nationally, but we are particularly, as you say, sensitive to pay award inflation.
Thank you, Nikki. First, Councillor Loudon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nikki. That was easy to understand, even for some of us who didn't perhaps do quite as well in their maths as Commissioner did. So I was going to follow on from what my colleague was talking about, because it does concern me that you're only anticipating a 2% increase in staffing pay awards. So we've got two different ways in, haven't we? One is through the PRRB, and I guess that's probably a little bit more manageable in terms of expectation, because it's effectively in the gift of the government. And the recipients are perhaps not as in the same position as most of us in the rest of the country, the economy, of being able to show their irritation, shall we say, if they're unhappy. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the Police Staff's NJC. which is not as easy to, I was going to use the word police, that's the wrong word, but anticipate. And given the pressures that there are on in other sectors of the economy around pay, I'm just wondering how realistic 2% particularly there may be. And that then follows on into if it is where the line is drawn, where potentially may that take the force and its relationship with its police staff, and then linking into, and forgive me, I didn't quite take in all of what you said, about holding police staff vacancies. So I'm just concerned at the fact that this may be an underestimate. And I understand why you're putting 2% in, I get that. But in reality, my concern is that that may not be quite what you end up with.
So I think there's one other thing to remember as well with the police and police staff is that our pay award is not on the 1st of April. It's actually on the 1st of September. So if there's any increase agreed for next year, the impact on 23-24 is actually 7 months, not 12 months. So the totality means that we have a little bit of time to be able to deal with it, and it will fall over 2 years. Doesn't mean to say that we won't obviously have to deal with it. And as I said, we have got a contingency in there, built into our budget, to look at these types of things, and pay award would be one of the first. With regards to the PRRB, the commissioners have been engaged with the PRRB, and also the treasurers across the whole of England and Wales have been involved, and they consult with us as well around what the objectives are and what our concerns are. So we're actually involved with the PRRB on that particular aspect, but I do take on board your point about the pay award.
Chairman, if I may just add, because it sort of links both Councillor Towell and Loudon's points, one of the challenges we face as we move forward is the structural need to maintain the police officer numbers. Now, of course, I don't want to reduce police officer numbers. The Chief Constable wouldn't want to reduce police officer numbers. But when you're looking at the totality of the organisation and where you need police staff, which would be better than police officers, it's going to be a really difficult look forward, because it makes the police staff more at risk. That's what it fundamentally does, this structural need to maintain the police officer numbers. If it was up to us to decide the numbers, we would have more flexibility about what that looks like as a totality, but we're fixed. So we've got a structural challenge around that, and that will also be difficult when we go into any negotiations with police staff. And as you said, police officers are unable to strike or show their irritation to us about their own pay. So we're in a bit of we'll have to just see how it goes this year. And it's why we do need to leave and have as much flexibility, and why I've gone for the maximum, to allow the new Chief Constable to really get an understanding of the totality of the organisation. And I did say if he wanted to be world class, he'd probably be proposing more police staff to me than he would police officers in some areas of the business. So I get your points, but we are a bit structurally constrained this year, going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a number. Councillor Alvey.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this is only a quick one. In considering the council tax base, have you made any assumptions around the changes in legislation that are taking place in April to enable or to prevent second homes from flipping to pay business rate? And of course, moving forward to 2024, certainly in Cornwall, we've already made a commitment to double council tax on second homes. It may be, provided the legislation, primary legislation is in place, it would be very helpful if perhaps when we move forward to next year's budget, you give us a flavour for what these changes are likely to make. And I appreciate that certainly, I mean, Cornwall Council has estimated next year when this, or 24-25 when this comes in, it'll be up to £25 million to the council tax budget, revenue budget, just that simple move. clearly there will be people who find a way around it. So that's why we're saying up to, but it would be very helpful if both of those things could be considered.
So for the, because obviously the second homes legislation isn't in yet, and we're hoping to have it in for the 1st of April, we're bound on our council tax bases to set them, the collecting authority set them. We have no right to set them. So it is set by the collecting authorities. We have got increases going forward, I think about 1.5%. I think within the papers that are before you today, we've got about 1.5% in on each year. But for us, it won't happen in 23-24, and it probably might not happen too much in 24-25, and what we'll see then is the surplus coming in for 25-26. So we normally lag by about 1 year on some of the things that you might be seeing in year for collecting authorities. But yes, I attended the budget consultation for Cornwall Council and was quite pleased to hear the sorts of figures that they are looking at the moment with regard to us. And what we have to remember is we're between 10 and 12% of the overall budget, overall council tax bill. So yeah, I will be waiting and looking at that avidly.
Thank you, Nikki. Alistair, Councillor Dewhurst.
Thank you, Roger. On page 8 of the preamble summary, there's just a little sort of bit on 1.5 in that final sentence there. You have the changes mean that depending on individual circumstances, working families...
Alistair, can you just bring your mic down a bit?
Can you not hear?
That would
Sorry.
be good, thank you.
Okay, so the changes mean that depending on individual circumstances, working families will be able to claim up to 100% support for the council tax liability rather than the current cap of 80. That's not the case. So Teambridge Council has been offering 100% council tax to some needy families for at least 13 years in the time I've been there.
So that completely understand, not all collecting authorities have, and we've had a number of them contact us this year as part of the consultation as a major preceptor to ask if we are happy that it moves from 80% to 100%. So Teambridge obviously have been ahead of those issues, so we've had a number.
If I may come back, please, Chair. So the reason we have your support is our very high level of council tax collection in Teambridge. So we offset that, but I think it is very important because this £15 increase is a massive dent in poor families' budgets in my district, and clearly, you know, it's a day's food for a family, something of that nature, and we want to see real value for it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alistair. Councillor Ataya Allah.
Thank you very much. And a quick question to Commissioner. Now, you're saying you're going to open more police stations. So you probably know where I'm going to go with this one. Paynton. Is that included in your second set of 6?
Oh, Councillor, Paynton is on my mind an awful lot. We don't have, at the moment, a estate that would enable the opening of a police station front desk, but there is still the library, and we have moved into Truro Council and shared their front desk in order to do an opening at Truro for a police inquiry office. So that could be still an option. At the moment, it's not. I haven't got it in my top 6 in what's in my mind. But thank you for raising it. And the Chief Constable knows he needs to visit South Devon and understand some of the estate challenges that we've got, particularly in Paynton. We'll see with my list of 6 when they come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions, members? Sorry, David, yes.
Thank you. Just for the Commissioner, just looking through the overview on 3.3, stripping away unnecessary bureaucracy. Could you sort of give me a little bit more information on what sort of things you'll be stripping back on? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it in the report and try and find whose words it is. It might be helpful if the Chief Constable, because this is part of, he's already come in and within a month made some decisions about stripping away some of the bureaucracy, but I'll let him speak.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for the question, Chair. Forgive me for my voice today. Like everybody else, I'm just dosed with a cold. Policing is not immune from this in the public sector. We love our bureaucracy and we love our policies, and I'm in my 34th year in policing now, and sometimes that gets in the way of us delivering a basic, good community service. It keeps cops out where they should be in the communities for as much of their 10-hour shift every day as they should be. So I've made it an absolute priority to strip a lot of that back. So some of the stuff we've done already, to give you a practical example, is around the meeting schedule. The amount of time that we were spending with senior commanders, actually forcing them to come to meetings unnecessarily, that could have been better spent going out and engaging with local communities, particularly at parish or local community level meetings. So we've actually completely inverted that, and I've said that each of my executive colleagues and each of my senior colleagues will now spend the time that's been released from going to some of those internal governance meetings to go out to local community meetings, and that if we expect our PCs and our sergeants to do it, there's absolutely no reason why I or my senior team shouldn't be able to do that either. But some of it's also policy based. Some of this is self-inflicted pain, and we're just going to strip a lot of that policy back. There is, and I'll just be very candid about this, there is particularly with a young, inexperienced workforce, young in service, inexperienced workforce, and it's a fantastic position to come into a new force with officer numbers being at the high water mark, as the Commissioner talked about. That's fantastic, and we are absolutely aligned in keeping those numbers as high as we possibly can. We think that's definitely what communities in this force area deserve. But actually there's always a balance, isn't there, between a relatively young in-service workforce and the amount of policy support that they need as they're developing their skills, their experience, their investigative nous, the stuff that you build up over time and experience. So I have to be thoughtful as well about how quickly I release some of that policy infrastructure, so that I provide a bit of protective support around these officers as they gain their investigative experience, as they're mentored through the first couple of years of the policing service. But the assurance I give you, and I've been consistently vocal about this over the last 4 weeks, is as much of the unnecessary bureaucracy that I can strip out, I will do exactly that.
Thank you very much. I just thought it was very important that the newer constables, etc., don't get fed up with that sort of thing. And as the Commissioner knows, both my father and grandfather were in the police, and they always moaned about bureaucracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. Question for Alison, just to go back to police station front desks again. I mean, instinctively, I'm a supporter of that policy. I think it's good to have that one-to-one connection. And Newquay was one of the first in the wave of the first wave of the reopenings. But just to step back and look at it from an evidence-based point of view, do we have any information regarding footfall and how much this initiative is being used, and weighing it up with the resources that have gone into that?
Thanks, Councillor Towell. Newquay was the first, and it was so quiet, nobody hardly knew it had been reopened full time. A couple of years ago, we reopened Newquay in the summer, and then we've extended that all year round. You will be getting, in your performance packs, under the public contact, we should start getting through, you haven't got it for this meeting, but you will start getting through the level of footfall to police inquiry officers. That isn't my main measure for politically, for me, of the value for money of the police station front desk being opened. It's much wider challenges that we've got around trust in policing, confidence in policing, the challenges on the 101 phone line, There is an absolute PR requirement, as in public relations, to show the public the police are on their side. And one of the reasons I was such an advocate for them, and it was a mother in Bude, and we've opened Bude this month, is a mother in Bude, when the stations used to be opened, was fleeing domestic violence from her partner and had to walk with 3 children to the police station because she didn't know where else to go. And, you know, if you can do that for one family, you can do that across the whole patch. These places of safety and the show that the police are on the side of their communities, they're not retracted, they are in your face, they are there for you, is part of the measure for me, is to be that satisfaction from the public and that ability to access policing when they need it. So I'm not worried about the numbers. The numbers was the reason it was closed, and I don't think that did us any favours. So I won't be using just the numbers of footfall as the reason for whether they stay open or not.
Alistair again, Councillor Dewhurst.
Thank you, Chair. So I have got a particular query, and firstly, thank you very much for your very comprehensive going through a lot of pages in the report, and it is all pretty clear. But on page 40, we've got a staffing analysis, and so we're talking FTEs, and we have the top line, which is police officers, and the closing balance at the 31st of March is 3610. And then underneath is, I presume, sectors of that, but it doesn't balance up. And I just wanted to know where the others were, because we've got 193 police community support, 2,256 police staff, 32 police staff for the OPCC. Where are the others in that 3610 totality? Or has my maths gone
Yes,
wrong?
it's all right, Councillor Dewhurst. The 3610 is the total number of police officers.
Yeah.
And also, just to say, the blue light officers, most of them are not actually employed by Devon and Cornwall Police. They're employed by Cornwall Council, the Tri-Service. Some are employed by the Fire Service. So they are our try and buy service things that we've trialled. So they're not necessarily part of the actual establishment. We pay only a third or a part towards those people. But the 3610 is the police officer numbers.
So if you take out 193, 2,256 and 32, well, what are the rest?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, it's just...
No, so you add them all together. So in totality, there's about 6,000 members of staff. So each of those are individual, they're different. So you've got 3,610 police officers.
Yep.
On top of that, you've got 193, which is the police, the PCSOs and the blue light officers. And then on top of that, you've got 2,298 police staff.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about 6,000 members of staff in total across Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly.
It would be nice if we had a list which balanced out. Sorry, Nikki.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Chair, if I may, could I just say, in terms of the budget, I'm going to be supporting it. I do think it is a massive sum of money, and it's going to make a real impact for the residents in my district. But I think there are really important things in here. I'm really pleased to see about the firearms and that we're keeping that going, because there's an awful lot of guns out in those rural areas as well as in the towns in the district. I think it's really important about what we're doing around drugs. And as I've already mentioned to you this morning, you know, there are parts of my county council division where ordinary, decent people trying to get on with life are being really impacted by very low-level stuff, but it is illegal activity, and we need to stop it, because People can't just hang around in the street smoking ganja or whatever it is that they do and not have an impact. And then finally, about the digital forensic services on which you mentioned on page 13, because as a safeguarding lead for a big charity on Wednesday, I was involved in a sadly not an uncommon case, but a really difficult case where a pretty young person, her sort of dealings online had been intercepted, and it was eventually, having gone through the mash and the marrow, it had ended up with the police, and that was quite a long time ago, and we're still waiting for some kind of resolution from the police, and I'd like to see a lot more effort put into this, because this business of online abuse is just appalling, and it's something that I suspect all of us never get to see, because it's things that young people are doing, and not necessarily quite such young people in terms of, but it is impacting on people, and there doesn't seem to be any way that at the moment we have of dealing with that. It's just, a shame, and teaching people, but at the end of the day, there are criminals out there doing this, and it's they're either stealing from older people who are not quite so sure how they're working online, or the sexualized impact on young people, which is just terrible. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Zoe, Councillor Riley.
Hi, so I'm not just new in here, I'm new to the council in its entirety. So I was just wondering if you could help me to understand by explaining how much you've increased the preset by percentage so far since you were elected, each year on year?
In cash terms, I can tell you off the top of my head, £88.72, I think, is it? Yeah, £88.72, and it works out at a 51.33% increase since I took office in the budgets that I've set.
So for Plymouth specifically, as Councillor Dewhurst suggested, it's a massive amount of money, a huge amount of money, in fact. So can I ask, as the spokesperson for Labour Violence Against Women and Girls, what does that mean for Plymouth specifically? Like, it's a huge amount of money. It's percentage-wise more than the increase in income wage-wise. So how is that going to help us if I vote for this today as a Plymouth councillor? How is that helping the residents that I represent?
So I suppose just in terms of this as being the totality of the budget to keep the organisation running, the one thing it'll do is secure your police officers in Plymouth so that you've got a focus down there. You've got a well-led policing team down in Plymouth under Chief Superintendent Matt Longman. So it will maintain his offers and actually increase them, because we are still increasing police officers at the moment. When they arrive, the 3,610, they haven't all been fully allocated out as to where they will go. So there's a bit about securing your police numbers in Plymouth. One of the big things that I would say is just things like accessing the extra funding that we've got, particularly for places like Plymouth and Exeter, Safer Streets funding, enhancing that. And I know this is the sorts of thing that the Chief Constable is thinking through. The areas where we've got the Safer Streets funding, he wants to see more policing connected to those particular geographies. So this budget will help protect the organisation as a whole to enable him to make some of those localised decisions around where those officers may get deployed and how they get deployed. Just in general terms, though, I think for us, we are, I've just refurbished the front desk area of Crown Hill Police Station. And Charles Cross Police Station front desk is still the busiest front desk we have in the entirety of the force area. I may well open Devonport Police Station front desk. That is one of the ones that is quite high on my lists, and I may well be doing that. So you may get another third. You'll be the only city in the patch with potentially 3 front desk openings. So just from a strategic perspective, I can give you those insights into what this budget helps support.
Thank you. I've been working on the Devonport thing. Yeah, so I kind of being cheeky asking another question is how, given the current situation publicly and the misconduct publicly, particularly for women, particularly for women's safety in Plymouth, and I am a caseworker as my job, as well as this, and the reporting crime for domestic abuse, sexual assault, so on and so forth, isn't actually considered to be that great here when they're reporting. I myself have had that experience. So what will be done in that area to make, if they already feel unsafe, given what's going on in the press at the moment, how are we going to make them feel any safer?
Well, I suppose one of the things, firstly, is that domestic abuse is one of the volume crimes that we have across the whole of Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. Violence is our biggest cohort of crime, so that is an area of priority for the Chief Constable to tackle. But one of the things that my office does is it funds those services for those women, children and men to access. They don't even have to go to the police if they're too frightened, not confident, however they may feel. They can go direct to victim support. And that service, I think, is the most empowering service any victim of domestic violence can have, because they can help you and support you through your reporting process. So I think those victim care services need greater promotion. And we've been massively trying to invest to reduce any waiting times for therapeutic support in relation to that as well. So I think for me, the bits that are within my direct control, those victim care services are really paramount. And I do think that we're increasing the budget. We've got a 10-year, long-term strategic contract with victim support to enable stability for those services because they are so vital. From a policing perspective, one of the things the Chief Constable, and he may want to speak about this, I don't know, he's absolutely clear about the importance of standards in policing, not just about getting any bad apples, as they call them, out of the organisation, but how they actually approach compassionately the work that they do every day. And I think for us in the reporting of domestic abuse, of which I've also been an experienced of that as well, and I'm hearing much more feedback from women who are having difficult times, particularly those reporting stalking and harassment. That is a weak area in Devon and Cornwall, please. We are aware of it, but I will let the Chief Constable say a few words about his own thoughts about this for you.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, your question absolutely spot on, Councillor. It's I think the starting point in this really difficult territory for policing at the moment is just a bit of honesty about the fact that there is a problem, and my responsibility as a Chief Constable for this force and how we address it. And that's why, you know, on day 4 after I arrived in this job, I made it really clear. I wrote to everybody in the organisation about the 3 things that were important to me, and public visibility and accessibility goes to the heart of your question about how accessible we are for victims, including some who don't have trust or confidence in the police service at the moment and what we're going to do in that space. But also one of the 3 issues was around standards, as the Commissioner said. And what I was really heartened by, though, if I could perhaps just add something positive, is I went out on patrol on New Year's Eve in Plymouth city centre, and a significant part of the briefing, you know, about probably close to 100 officers in the briefing room, and a significant part of the briefing on New Year's Eve was about women and girls' safety on the streets of Plymouth during the nighttime economy over that New Year's Eve period. And it was about, very specifically, the intelligence, the better intelligence that we're gathering about predatory men who are hanging about on streets, in nightclubs, trying to identify and tackle and abuse criminally women who are exposed. And we were pleased to see the conviction yesterday in the sentence of 18 years for one of those men who kidnapped and raped a woman in exactly that environment last year. So we have, the sense changed to me within policing, as it absolutely should be, was the fact that a couple of years ago we wouldn't have been having that briefing to the same extent, and the fact that we are actively targeting intelligence, using intelligence-led methods, using all the other strategies and capabilities that we use for any other crime type, and we're absolutely putting it to this massively important issue of violence against women and girls. And I sat on that briefing and I went out with the cops and patrolled with them right over midnight, and then spent a couple of hours in the contact centre in the early hours of New Year's Day. And I was really reassured by how important everybody got, police officers and staff, how they all got how important this issue was within my force. But I can absolutely assure you how much of a priority this is going to be for me as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Good to hear. Dennis, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chairman. I was at a meeting yesterday, and I was just wondering how much of the budget money is going to be put towards communication, or may I mention 101? I was at this meeting, and we've got quite a thing coming off on the 15th of March in the town. And our town clerk was at a meeting with the police and the security services. It's to do with the HMS Enterprise, our ship, is marching through the town in a final parade because they're decommissioning. And the town clerk was asked, how did he get hold of somebody if there was an incident? And they said, ring 101. Well, I'm afraid if he rings 101, he'll be about 20 minutes to 2 hours on the phone and probably get directed to the website, which is what I've been done before. So I was wondering, are you putting any more money into communications in general in your budget?
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. As you probably recall from the last few budgets, we've invested quite a few million actually, into the contact centre in terms of it. We're not needing, cash is not the problem for that contact centre. Leadership, management, proper oversight, the introduction of, dare I say it, AACC7, which is a piece of software that needs to come in to make the whole service work better, that can do that callback feature that the chairman has been asking for about 5 years since we've talked about 101. We've got the investments there. It's now about the leadership and management of that service, which really needs to be gripped. And so I think the other thing I would say, though, if there is an incident, the number to ring is 999. And we've just had recent figures, because I set a target for the temporary chief constable before Will arrived, in relation to answering the 999 calls quickly. If you remember from the last performance report, it dropped dramatically. I think we were down to around 60% were only being answered within 10 seconds. We've now managed to reach the target of above 90% answered within 10 seconds for the last few weeks. Now, I'm not assured that will be sustained without the Chief Constable's focus on that area, but we have done a massive improvement in the 999 call handling.
Yeah, thank you for that very much. As you know, we're one of the towns that have where our front desk opened, and I was also told that it's increasing in customers all the time, which is quite good. And our CCTV is working, which you kindly subscribe to. You put in 25 grand and we put in about 100, but we renewed it completely. But we are waiting, and I don't know if you've got any pull on it, and it's not quite with the budget, but I'm sorry I'm taking up a little bit of time, Chairman. We're just waiting for a BT link between Tiverton and Exeter so that we can get 24/7 coverage. At the moment, we're getting 6 hours a day, but so if there's any way that can be progressed, I would be thankful.
If I may, Councillor Knowles, is that with Exeter City Council? Yeah, it might be worth Laura just taking that back as a point, because I think you're going to help monitoring the CCTV systems, and because Exeter has made a dramatic investment in that as well. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Laura, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to Councillor Riley for bringing forward what you just did, and I'd like to talk to you later because we're counterparts, I think, on that. And also thank you very much for the assurance from Alison and from the Chief Constable through Alison that you're going to put more policing into Exeter in that Safer Streets 4 area. I'll take that as a verbal contract and definitely hold you to it. Thank you very much. In terms of the budget generally, I just want to say we are discussing here, as we are in all our councils as well, having to put council tax up, and the Police and Fire Authority will be doing the same. I just think it's terrible that we're having to do this in the light of all the cuts that have come to services over the past 10, 13 years. And I think if we'd have better government investment in all of those things, local authority and police and fire, we wouldn't be actually having this discussion today about the impact it's going to have as a further tax really on the people. I just want to say that. Thank you.
It's a fair comment. Councillor Tilby.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's very concise and understandable for us Indians. This is one for the Commissioner. Thank you for opening up Bude Police Station. It's been, as you say, the example you gave was an excellent example of how these stations can be used. I'm just wondering if we could have a bit more idea of the consistency of the opening times, because from each day it's a different time, and unless people go onto the website, they don't know. And secondly, for the Chief Constable, with regards to retaining our very experienced officers, is there any way that we can try and induce them to carry on their career rather than retire early?
You'll be interested to know, Bude was added, Councillor Tilby, later than every other police station front desk that I was reopening last year. So we've had a real difficulty in just getting it to be opened. It came late, it needed a bit of capital works, it needed a recruitment exercise. There are standardised hours, it's just in order to get it ready to be open by the end of this month, it's been a bit inconsistent while people are in training. But it should be Monday to Saturday, 10 till 3, and that should be the consistency.
Sorry, Commissioner, the only reason I asked that is because I reported that to the various parish councils that it would be open 10 till 3, and then I was reverted back to the website, your website, and the hours are totally different.
Yeah, no, until the end of this month, which is actually today. So Monday, I think as of Monday, it should be that. And if they didn't have enough staff, they've got a plan B. So don't worry. We're absolutely determined to make sure we get these front desks open correctly, consistently, reliably, so that people know that they can go there to use them.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was just a question from a councillor about experienced officers. Happy to answer that if you'll allow me. Yeah, I'd love to be able to keep experienced cops on. Those of us, now out of that scheme, but those of us who were of a certain generation in police and were on the old pension scheme, it was so financially punitive for officers to stay on that actually we were losing, and it seemed entirely counterintuitive. Officers who had just come to the peak of their experience, their contacts and their knowledge, and then they were essentially being taxed into retirement by virtue of how punitive the tax regimes around that old pension scheme are. The 2015 pension scheme slightly mitigates against that risk because the minimum retirement age is 60, so there's a longer service profile before you come to full pension age, but there's a limited amount of levers I have to encourage and retain experienced staff at the moment. I suppose the only point of hopefully assurance I can give you is that all these young in service police officers who have a wide age range, which is great because some of them bring in a wide range of skills. They're not just like me, joined straight from school or university. They will all start to build up a significant amount of experience over the next couple of years. But retaining experienced police officers is going to be an ongoing challenge over the next 5 years. There's no straightforward or easy answer to that.
Thank you, Chief Constable. I just wondered, Chair, if there's something that we as a panel could work together on to see if we can try and retain these excellent officers.
Chairman, if I may, just to reassure you a little bit, police staff vacancies when they arrive are often police officers come back in a different guise. So because they are so young when they retire, they can often come back in another guise. So you will find a lot of ex-police officers doing some of the police staff roles supporting detectives or in our custody suites, or a range of different roles that they'll come back to do. So we don't lose them entirely, but we lose them from obviously their warranted powers.
Yeah, we did lose a lot of very experienced officers around 2010, 2011, when a lot of them were virtually forced out, which is an unfortunate situation, but there we have it. Chris, Councillor Hackett.
It's Philip. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask the Chief Constable what his perception is going forward with the PCSO force. I attended Broadwood Widger Parish Council meeting. It's a very small village, very rural, on the southernmost part of Torridge, and they would welcome you to come along to experience the rurality of the area. The PCSO numbers have been falling quite rapidly since I became a councillor and on this panel, and they are the eyes and ears for the locality. They are the intelligence service for the uniformed branch. Can we have an assurance from you that they will remain a viable force and hopefully increased? Because not only are we increasing the uniform officers, we want to increase the PCSOs. I'd like you to respond on that point first, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to. I was out in patrol on Tuesday morning, spent the whole morning out with PCSOs and neighbourhood officers in Camborne and Redruth. So I absolutely understand how important they are. I mean, it goes back to the point that the Commissioner and Nikki were making earlier on about the amount of budget flexibility we have to recruit and retain people, and the flexibility I have around a workforce mix within Devon and Cornwall Police, that sort of 6,000 odd officers and staff mix. And there is a limited amount of flexibility at the moment because the financial incentives, of course, are around warranted police officer numbers, as the Commissioner outlined earlier on. And that leaves, when that's 85% of your base, and a significant proportion, I think it's 58%, Nikki will keep me right, of that 85% staffing base as police officers, it leaves you a limited amount of scope and room to actually address workforce mix. I'm a strong advocate of PCSOs. I think they give us longevity and stability and the recognition factor that is so key to basic good policing that's locally connected and locally respected. So the assurance I can give you now is in part an assurance, because I won't be dropping the numbers that we currently have. We've just over about 150 at the moment, and I've had and the Commissioner and I are in strong agreement on that point. Whether I can actually grow them, and I certainly would have a positive ambition to do so, depends on the funding balance that I have and the amount of money I have to do that, because as we've been talking about this morning, it's fantastic to come in as incoming Chief Constable and have a position where we're going to have 3,610 police officers. I think communities in Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly deserve that I will work as hard as I can to keep those police officer numbers up as high as I can, but that has an effect, sometimes a negative effect, on the number of staff in other permutations in this organisation that I can recruit and retain. In a perfect world, I would have a lot more flexibility, I have to say, and not the structural rigidity around the number of officers that I have to retain and the other people that I might want to recruit, some of whom might be semi-warranted, some of whom might not need any warranted powers at all. That is not the current financial arrangement that we find ourselves in. So we'll not have any less, and if the budget arrangement changes and the funding becomes available, I would like to have more, but I'm not going to give you a false guarantee in numbers on that.
Thank you very much, Chief Constable. I'll take some reassurance from that. Now, if I could go back to a question I asked you, Alison, at the last meeting about street marshals in Bideford, and you were going to look into it for me. Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite catch you. Oh, go on. Right. Okay, thank you. I will make it brief, but I'm going to make my point. We need these street marshals, and with the greater precept, can we make sure that we can get immediate response to requests for funding through our CSPs and other councils that require this funding? Could you come back to me on that, please? Thank you.
So I'll just quickly also touch on your earlier point as well, if I may, Chairman, that Councillor Hackett raised. It's the 20-year celebration of police community support officers that is happening this year. So as of January, and we've got a handful of PCSOs that have been there the whole time that we've still got in the organisation. But the sort of things that they've done over those 20 years are incredible, absolutely incredible. So we're proud to celebrate the 20 years anniversary of them being created. But my ambition would be to see more tri-service officers as well, which is the Cornwall aspect and how we get them into Devon. That's the police, fire and ambulance embodiment in one person that we have. So that's where I'd like to see us, because it's really good value for money and it's a really good integration of 3 services to get the community what they need. But just in terms of your second point, obviously we were successful with Barnstable for Safer Streets funding and got over £500,000 to support improvement in safer streets for Barnstable. We haven't managed to secure anything for Bideford, so unfortunately there's no obvious funding stream in terms of that immediate ask. But through the Community Safety Partnership, you have been given funding through my office, and there's a particular uplift in relation to violence that's come through from the government down into Community Safety Partnership. So I think is that the ways in which you can link your issue that you'd like to solve to some of the priorities that are coming with the funding will be one of the ways to do that. And you have a good community safety partnership in your area as well, very active. So more than happy for them to speak directly with my office about best ways to make that communication work.
Thank you, Alison. Okay, no further questions. Thank you. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. No further. Alistair, yes.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to come back to the previous one and the Chief Constable's statement, and I was wondering whether this committee might like to request that you write to the Home Secretary and the Chancellor about this, because clearly it's just not really right that we're losing senior officers because they're just taxed out of their job. I don't know if there is any support in the room for that.
That was my point exactly, Chair. I fully support my colleague on that motion.
I would also support that with Councillor Dewhurst. Thank you.
Chair, can I just answer? I'm not quite sure what
can I just make this a little bit brief? We're talking about a budget situation here, and I don't want to get sidetracked. What we're saying, I think, I don't know whether police officers are continually being forced out now. They were at one stage at 30 years, was it? Was it 30-year sort of bit? I'm not sure if they're doing that now. Is that what you're talking about, Alistair?
Chief Constable said that police officers were forced out because of tax issues. I'm sure he'd confirm or deny. If it's not the case, I'm sorry for wasting everybody's time.
Yeah,
but if
Chair.
it is the case, I think it's to you to write on our behalf.
Being forced out now. Commissioner.
Fundamentally, Chairman, it's the individual's choice to choose what they wish to do with their own lives. Never do I have more conversations about blooming pension than with police officers who know their leaving date at the point of starting. But we won't go there on that one. I'm not sure we need a letter. There is a challenge for really senior rank, because by the time you get them to Chief Constable, they're ready to leave, and that's a real issue just in terms of a difficulty of securing Chief Constables. But I don't think we particularly need a letter. Pension changes have changed. It's the older, longer-serving officers that get the better choices, should I maybe say.
Yeah, well, as I understand it, 30 years is part of the contract, isn't it? They can leave. Yeah.
So I think we need some clarity for the Chief Constable here on this, because either it is or it isn't an issue. If it isn't an issue, then fine, I'm sorry for wasting everybody's time. But if it is an issue. I think there is a consensus here that we would like you, Chair, to write to the Chief, to the Home Secretary and the Chancellor.
Well, hopefully I can address this relatively quickly. It was an issue under the old 1987 scheme where police officers could retire, and the Commissioner's right, it is a choice, but certainly the annual allowance thresholds had changed so much that actually, and the tax regime is punitive, I have to say, under that old arrangement, that many police officers made particularly at senior ranks where they were breaching in multiple successive years the annual allowance tax regime, would have made a choice to retire because it would have been financially beneficial for them to do so. Under the new 2015 career average pension scheme, that is less of an issue because police officers, the minimum retirement age is 60. So what we will see over the next few years, because we're in this transitional phase between the old pension scheme and the new pension scheme, is that become less and less of a problem. So it is a time-bound problem. But again, I don't pretend it doesn't come down to personal choice. Of course it does, particularly after people have spoken to financial advisors, but it is a problem that will go away over the next year or two.
If it's going away in the next year or two, then it's...
I think we're sort of verging on the operational part anyway, sort of thing anyway. So if there are no more questions, I've got a couple of quick ones. Nikki, the pay awards, I'm looking at your slides there. Is it 2% or 5% over two tranches? Is that what it is?
So the pay award that we've included for 23-24 is 2%. The pay award that was gained in 22-23, so the current year, was an average of 5%. And we say average because every individual received £1,900, so some at the lower levels received in excess of 5%, and some of the upper levels it was lower than, it was probably 1 or 2%, but the average was 5%. So it's 2% for 23-24.
Right, okay, that's significant money, isn't it? And my second question is, Commissioner, you've increased your staffing in the OPCC. For a specific reason?
They're on my books, but they're actually they're externally funded posts that work for the region. So they're on the payroll here, but I get external funding. Someone else is paying for them. That's not bad, is it?
Right. Members, situation is, and I've lost my papers now. What have I done with that? There it is. So we're in a situation where we need to make a recommendation here, and the three areas are: support the precept without qualification or comment, support the precept and make recommendations, veto the proposed precept because too high or too low. Members must be voting for the same reason, and I don't think it's going to sort of like go against too low. From here, from the chair, I would like to make a proposal for debate or not, that we accept the Commissioner's precept, and do I have a seconder? Loads of seconders. So the vote now, so you've got a seconder there, Ross. So the vote now on your keypads, wherever they are, and I think I've got one here, haven't I? No, I haven't got that.
It's going to come up as soon as you tell us that you're going to vote. So you'd like to start the vote now?
I think I'd like to start the vote now. All comfortable? Yep, good. Let's go. Oh, I've got it. Okay. So I have 11. So 13. There's 13 in the room. So that is unanimous, Commissioner. Amazing. Thank you very much, members. Okay. So that's done then, isn't it? That's good. Okay, that's agreed. Commissioner, spend the money wisely.
Thank you kindly, panel, for your support. I think that might be the first time without conditions that you may have supported a budget for me. So I want to thank you very much for that.
Amazing. Something's happened. Now then, I've got a situation here where we are at 12:20. I am sort of running quite late here. Would members like a comfort break? So there's a nod there, there's a nod there. So please take a maximum of 10 minutes. So it wasn't unanimous. But I think you just sneaked it by 12-1. Abstentions don't count, so it was 12-0. Yeah, that's right. Right, members. I want to move on to item 6, which is the update report on contract services within Devon and Cornwall Police. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll mainly go to questions, but I will point, because we haven't had much time between the last panel meeting and this. So what you see in here, the biggest thing to point you to is 3.3 in the report, because these are the things that have or haven't changed since the last meeting in particular. So as I mentioned, the data, which I will say is unstable and I'm not assured is sustainable yet, but we have met 90% of 999 calls within 10 seconds. All calls now, that P1 line is now, P2 line is now being triaged. Both of those are being triaged, so somebody gets a human voice before they get put into any sort of queue. So that's happened for both of those phone lines. AACC7, not yet there. Chief Constable tells me next month, but it's a piece of software that we've had some major challenges with introducing. So I hope by the next panel when we meet in June, I can give you a substantive update about where we actually are with some of those particular issues. And then obviously the reopening of front desks. We have achieved 6 and literally viewed as of Monday, I believe, it is 10 till 3 for Monday to Saturday. It will be there. If not, the Chief Constable will make sure somebody is. So it's happening. And we've just announced today, with the support from the budget, that we will have 6 more locations reopened. So that's probably the main things to tell you overall without, spending time too long on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions, members? For anybody? No. So the recommendation is for the panel to note the report. Are members comfortable with that? No dissenting voices. Thank you very much. Moving on then to the Commissioner's update. Can I hand over to the Commissioner again, please?
Again, panel, obviously if you will have read this, but I think the main thing to flag for me in particular is the West Country Women's Awards, which was quite a flagship held in Plymouth in December. And a number of, I sponsored the Violence Against Women and Girls category. And what was really great is we invited those shortlisted women to a meeting to discuss how we better improve the dignity of women throughout the criminal justice system, from reporting crime to actually ending up confinement in prison if they are an offender. And we are motoring. So that has come up under the Criminal Justice Board, and it's some new and committed women in championing some of the challenges we've got in the criminal justice system. So that's all I'll add, because that's not in necessarily the report.
Thank you. And I was at the West Country Awards, and it was an excellent evening. And Fran was there as well. So, thank you. Members, any questions on the update report at all? No. Thank you very much. So the recommendation is to note the report. Are members comfortable with that? Thank you very much. Quite swiftly. Item 8 is the police and crime plan, which is the scorecard. Commissioner, are you going to take this, or Felicity?
Again, I think we'll probably just go straight to questions. I'll just highlight one thing that's not in the report that might be interesting for panel members to note. We've had a discussion before about what's the direction of travel, will I ever set targets, all those sorts of things that we've had in the past, discussion at panel. The one area I'm uncomfortable about, and I've yet to work out the detail with how I'm going to do this with my team, but under the number of ASB incidents recorded by the police, we've got a downward trajectory as the direction of travel, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with that because we know from the HMIC FRS inspection, the engage process that the force is in, that the crime data integrity around ASB was left wanting, which actually means we're not recording ASB correctly. And it may well be that I want to see I don't think we need a direction of travel on that one. Me saying down when we know we're not recording it correctly doesn't feel right. We'll come back at next panel with a better way of doing it, but I think we don't want to put a direction of travel on there at the moment. So I just wanted to flag that to members. But as you can see, violence is still our main challenge, particularly concerning, as you can see. We're always worried about young victims of crime and what the impact that has on them for the rest of their lives, and contact, which we've covered, and we'll do a substantive update at the June meeting.
Thank you. It is disturbing to see that domestic violence is on the increase. I'm not quite so sure again whether this is people are more comfortable to report this, or whether it is in effect going up. But it's as the report says, it is a hidden crime, and I think we should do all that we possibly can in order to reduce that. And I know government have given a substantial amount of funding this year and next in order to tackle it from a local point of view. Members, any questions on the scorecard at all? Councillor Tayali, yeah.
Thank you very much. Question to the Commissioner of Section 5.4, number of recorded hate crimes. It's almost gone up 1,000, I think, from within a year. It's touching 961, but it's just quite 1,000 here. It's constantly gone up, and I do welcome that you put in the recording here, which is going great, fantastic. But what actions are you going to take? And can I ask you, in terms of your police and crime plan and your crime intentions, whatever you call it in the pack here, can I ask you, you've got road vision 0, domestic violence. Can I ask you to add a 6th pledge in tackling hate crime as well, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as you know, it is a pledge because I've made it a mission critical indicator in the police and crime plan monitoring. So while it isn't one of my top 4 priorities, it does come under violent crime, and I'm particularly concerned and trying to assess the hypothesis is, are you safe to walk down a street, whoever you are, in Devon and Cornwall without being targeted because of who you are? So that is the hypothesis I'm trying to establish. We've done some initial data trawl, and I'm doing some scrutiny on it, and I'd welcome your help. I believe my office has reached out to you to assist us with some of the focus groups and the questions that we may ask. But we are needing at the moment and totally going to focus on the 2 top areas of hate crime to understand what's happening, one of which is race and one of which is around sexuality. And those are the areas that we're going to really try and drill down into. And again, by the June meeting, when I come before you at panel, we'll have completed that scrutiny, and I'll be able to tell you some of the things that we might have done on the back of the recommendations from there. So I think, again, substantively in June, we'll be able to give you a real insight into that. So it is a pledge. It is on here. I haven't set a target. I haven't said 0, and that's what you're trying to get me to say. But we have 0 tolerance. And we do multiple campaigns around to encouraging people to report hate crime. But the reality is we just want them to report the crime. Let's look after these people correctly once they've reported the crime that's happened to them. And we can help establish whether it's hate or not. But the reality is it isn't a good picture, and I don't care why it's increasing, whether it's national conversations, national media that causes a spike as people come forward. It's still increasing, and that's the bit that we're concerned about with community cohesion. And I haven't got that data yet about real specific geographies and community cohesion. And I would really encourage the local authorities here, when you do your annual surveys, to ask a question about how well people from different backgrounds get on well together. I can start using that community cohesion measure to help me with tackling some of the hate crime challenges we've got.
Can I come back, Chair? Thank you for that. And Torbay, in terms of community cohesion, is certainly leading the way on that one, I would like to think. What I was trying to say in terms of the target 0, no, I was talking about your crime intentions. So you have 4 pledges, I think. And that's where I want to try and pin you down on. Will you make tackling hate crime your 5th force pledge?
I will not make it my 5th, but just to reassure you, because the 4 priorities that I have in my plan is a whole-scale change in how the police may respond to those 4 crimes. I'm not sure some of the answer here is a police response to these issues. So I wouldn't make it a whole-scale force challenge in terms of how they respond to it. It's more about our communities and our other partners that I probably need to work with in relation to this. So it is a piece of work. It is a priority in the sense that it's measured, so you can hold me to account and scrutinise what I'm doing in this area. And if you believe I'm not doing enough, you can, expose that here around it. So I suppose keep me on my toes is the point to make.
Good. Thank you for that. Anything further on the scorecard? Laura, Councillor Wright. Yeah.
Thank you. Just further on that, I was under the impression that tackling hate crime is one of the Chief Constable's top 4 priorities, which seems strange if it's not the crime commissioners. Have I got that totally wrong? I saw it on a wall.
Chief, you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I'm not sure what wall you saw it on. It is a priority for us, whether it's written down anywhere. Of course, it's going to be a priority for us. And the Commissioner is talking about the priorities within the policing crime plan, to which she holds me to account for the performance of my force. So there's perhaps just slightly different labels and terminology. But none of this means that this massively significant issue isn't a problem that we recognise and we're doing a lot about. None of this means this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any further questions on the scorecard? I found it very easy to read these days, Commissioner. I think it's improving. I really do. Not necessarily the figures, but at least the reporting of them. So well done, Felicity, if it's in your court. So any further questions, members? No. So the recommendation is for the panel to note the report. Are we comfortable with that at all? There's a lot of nodding going on. Thanks very much for that. So moving to item 9, complaints against the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I think, Fran, you can provide an update to the panel.
Certainly, thank you, Chair. There's been 1 new complaint in the last period of time against the Commissioner. In the report, it suggests that matter is now resolved, but actually within the last couple of days, we've had some additional correspondence, and you'll remember that the complaints against the Commissioner are for the chair of this panel in consultation with myself. It's not an automatic delegation, so Chairman, we'll be back in touch in the next few days just to discuss the next steps.
Yeah, I can't say I've seen the complaint, and the complaint has been written to. Councillor Loudon, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's difficult for me to understand whether or not this is a good performance. I'm just wondering whether or not you have data to see how you compare to other PCCs, and whether that's something that we could incorporate in future reports. Because, as I say, I mean, the total we've got here, I could go, well, that's brilliant, isn't it? Because it's only 3, but it could well be, you know, that nobody else has ever had a complaint. I suspect it won't be the case. You get my drift.
Chairman, shall I come back on that? It is possible to get data. I don't have it with me, but each panel and the way that they're set up is slightly different. So it's not necessarily possible to do a direct comparison with all of the 43 areas, because some is delegated to the chair and that might be captured differently, and some is dealt with in consultation with the relevant chief executive and monitoring officer. But I can look at some data for next time for you.
Thank you, Fran. Martin, Councillor Elvey.
I was just going to say briefly, it's not an issue of how many complaints there are, it's how many are potentially upheld that's the issue. I think as councillors, we all see malicious complaints come in against us from time to time that are not upheld. So I think the issue is upheld complaints, not actual complaints.
Noted, yeah, thanks very much. Anything further, members, at all on this? So the recommendation is for the panel to note the report. Comfortable with that, members? Thank you very much. Moving then through to item 10, the work programme. That's on pages 123 to 124 in your bundle. Any comments on that at all? Councillor Loudon, yeah?
Sorry, Chair. I'm just looking at, I've lost it now, 25th of November, contact services within Devon and Cornwall Police. This, I presume, is 101. Yes? Right, so I'm just going back to we had a lengthy discussion at the last meeting, and one of the things that we were told from memory was that, was it Humberside? Without me going back to my notes, I think it was Humberside, were being brought in, had been brought in, and I'm just wondering whether waiting till November to get a feel for how they're looking at things, how things are changing, whether or not we could bring that information forward, or am I misinterpreting what this item is about?
Chairman, may I help? At the last panel meeting, you all agreed you'd want it at every agenda item so that you could closely scrutinise the efforts being made in this area. So you can expect it on every agenda item. So it'll be at the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until there's a bit more confidence, I think, in terms of how we're improving things. No, I hope not. Hope not. Hope not.
Anything further on the work programme specifically? It's a longish list. We'll try to get into it shortly. Right, okay. Has anyone got anything further to put forward? Well, I will say this then, if nothing today, then please feel free to get hold of myself and or Ross before the next panel meeting if you want anything further to be put onto the work programme at all. That said, I think it's 1 o'clock. Well, I don't think it's 1 o'clock. I think it is 1 o'clock. So therefore, I want to bring the panel meeting to a close. So thanks very much to everyone. Chief, very nice to see you. Thanks very much for turning up. Commissioner, Fran, all the rest of the crowd there at the back of there, thanks very much for your attention today. Members, thanks very much for your contributions. And I want to close the meeting. Thank you.